Hello, you guys. Let's talk about finding and approximating square roots. Take a look at this first vocabulary term, a perfect square. A perfect square is when you have a nice, easy whole number like 1 and you square it. So 1 to the second power means 1 times 1, which is 1. 2 to the second power means 2 times 2, which is 4. 3 to the second power means 3 times 3, which gives us 9. And 4 to the second power means 4 times 4, which gives us 16. Now a square root comes from, and I want you to look over at this picture, so please put this in your note-taking guide. So everybody knows what a square looks like. So if I drew a really easy square that had 3 rows and 3 columns, then you would tell me that this edge was 3 and this edge was 3. But if I asked you what is the whole entire square, the area, you would say 3 times 3, which is 9. So when we say square, we want the answer of 9. When we say the word square root, we want just one of the edges. So the square root of 9 is 3, and you can see it here. It's just one of the edges. So if you take a look at the vocabulary, the square root of 9 equals 3. Or the square root of 100 would be 10, because remember, 10 times 10 makes 100. Okay, now look at this next where it says square roots, and I want you to use your highlighter and notice the S, square roots. That means they want 2 answers. And here's what they're asking. If I want the square roots of 25, there are actually 2 answers. One of the answers is 5, because 5 times 5 gives us 25. But don't forget about negatives. It could also be negative 5, because negative 5 times negative 5 would also give us a positive 25. So in algebra we say if m to the second power equals n, then m is the square root of n. Okay, take a look right here, finding the square roots, and you got to look out for that S. So we know that 8 to the second power is 64, and negative 8 to the second power is also 64. Therefore, the square roots of 64 are positive 8 and negative 8. And then look at B. You know that 6 to the second power is 36, and negative 6 to the second power is 36. So the square roots of 36 are positive 6 and a negative 6. Now this is super important, and I want this in your note-taking guide. You need to memorize all the perfect squares up to 20 to the second power is 400. So I want you to write these down in order and start memorizing them. You should already know up to 12 to the second power is 144. So there really is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 new ones. And 20 to the second power is pretty easy. That's 400. Write this down, memorize that this week as soon as you can. Now when it says evaluating, they just want one simple answer, okay? So take a look at A. The square root of 25 is 5. Now I know they want the positive answer because see in front there is no negative symbol. That means they want the positive answer. They want 5. But take a look at B. See this negative in front? That means they want the negative answer. So the opposite of the square root of 49 would be the negative answer, negative 7. And we know this because negative 7 to the second power is 49. Okay? Take a look at the guided practice. Find the square root. Do you see how there is no S? They just want one answer. That's what they're saying. So the square root of 9 is just positive 3. The square root of 1 is just 1. And then look at number 3. See that negative in front? That means they want the negative answer. So negative square root of 64 is negative 8. And this you would read the opposite of the square root of 100 is negative 10. Now, I promise you're going to like this, approximating square roots, a whole lot more if I can get you to memorize all of the perfect squares. So right now, I want you to pause the video and write down all these perfect squares up at the top, okay? So that's 1 to the second power, 2 to the second power, 3 to the second power, 4 to the second power, 5 to the second power. Write these all down and quiz yourself, okay? Now, once you have that written down, take a look with me. They want us to say between which 2 consecutive, that means one right after the other, integers does radical 200 or the square root of 200 lie. Okay, so this is what they say. Make a list of the perfect squares. We did that up above. And then we want to find where 200 is. See how I just took the number under the radical, the 200, and let me do it over here. It's easier if you look in the margin. See how I put the 200? I want to find the two perfect squares that are closest to 200. So I see 196 is a little bit smaller, and 225 is a little bit bigger. So I put them in order. The smaller one on the left, the bigger one on the right. And now, notice what I did. I wrote the numbers again, but I put the square root symbol around each one. Okay? Now, I know that the square root of 196 is exactly 14. And now the square root of 200 is the one I'm trying to estimate, so I'm just going to bring that down. The square root of 225 is exactly 15. So I know that this number, the square root of 200, has to be between 14 and 15. And that's all I wrote, that it's between 14 and 15. Okay, now again, look at example 4. They want to know what is the value of the square root of 70 rounded to the nearest whole number. So again, we have to approximate. And again, you're going to want to write all of the perfect squares. So pause the video right now and write these down. 1 to the second power is 1, 2 to the second power 4, 3 to the second power 9, 4 to the second power 16, 5 to the second power 25, 6 to the second power 36. So keep going, okay? And write them down until you get to 100 and then stop. Now, take a look here. See how they want me to estimate the square root of 70? What I do is I take the number that's under the radical sign, the square root, and I put it right here. And then I look at my list of perfect squares and I try to find the two numbers that 70 would be between. So see how 64 is a little bit smaller, and then there would be the number 70, and 81 is a little bit bigger. So what I did is I wrote the smaller one on the left, the bigger one on the right. So I have 64 and then 70 and then 81. Now the next thing I do is I put the square root symbol around all three of the numbers. So I know the square root of 64 is exactly 8, and I bring that down. The square root of 70 is the one I want to estimate. I leave that alone. And the square root of 81 is exactly 9. Now in this case, they don't want me to tell them it's between 8 and 9. They want me to say which one is it closer to. So look at the numbers under the radical. See how 64 and 70 are only 6 steps away, and 70 and 81 are 11 steps away. I see I need to fix that. Let me do that right now. I don't know why I said 9. So that's 11. Okay, and so you can see that this is definitely, 70 is closer to 64 than it is to 81. So that means the square root of 70 has to be closer to 8. And so that's where I wrote it here. The square root of 70 is about 8, and I boxed my answer. Okay, let's talk about the guided practice. Approximate to the nearest whole number. So they want us to tell them which number is it closest to. Again, you're going to like these a whole lot more if you memorize all the perfect squares. So again, in your note-taking guide, I would write all the perfect squares just like I did, so you can use them to help you. Pause the video if you need to do that right now. Okay, take a look at number 5. We want to estimate the square root of 19. So I put 19 in the middle, and I look at my list, and I find the two numbers that are closest to 19. So 16 is a little smaller, I put it to the left. 25 is a little bigger, I put it to the right. And now I put the square root symbol around all three of the numbers. Now the square root of 16 is exactly 4. The square root of 25 is exactly 5. Now you have to tell me, well, which one is it closer to? Look at 16 and 19 are 3 steps apart, and 19 and 25 are 6 steps apart. So it's definitely closer to the 16. So the square root of 19 is very close to the number 4. Okay, take a look at number 6. The square root of 40. So again, put 40 in the middle, and then look at your list and find the two numbers that are closest to 40. I see 36 is a little smaller, 49 is a little bit bigger. And then I write the three numbers and I put the square root symbol around all three. Now the square root of 36 is exactly 6. The square root of 49 is exactly 7. And which one is it closer to? Well, look, 40 is only 4 steps away from 36. And 40 is 9 steps away from 49. So I know it's closer to 36. That means it has to be closer to 6. So the square root of 40 is really close to 6, and this means it's about equal to. Okay, take a look at number 7, the square root of 75. Again, I put 75 in the middle, and I use my list to find the numbers that are closest. So 64 is a little bit smaller, 81 is a little bit bigger, and then I put a square root symbol around all three numbers. So the square root of 64 is exactly 8, the square root of 81 is exactly 9. Then I just have to see which one is it closer to. Well, in this case, it's only 6 steps away from 81, so I know it's closer to 9. So the square root of 75 is closest to 9. It's about 9. Take a look at number 8, the square root of 138. So I put 138 in the middle, and then I find the numbers that are closest to it. 121 is a little bit smaller, 144 a little bit bigger, and then I put a square root symbol around all three numbers. So the square root of 121 is exactly 11, the square root of 144 is exactly 12, and I just decide which one is it closer to. Well, it's only 6 steps away from the 12, so I know it's got to be closer to 12. So the square root of 138 is about 12. Now notice how I X'd all of this off. It says use a calculator. You cannot use a calculator in my class to do these, so just X those out.